Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. We've been doing this for a number of years now, panel on cinematography for television. I was struck by the fact last year we had Rob McLaughlin. I don't know if you know him. He's shot a bit of Westworld and The Affair and Game of Thrones. He shot The Red Wedding. And I was struck by how his shoots were all over the world. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that this year, this is going to be a very New York-centric affair. Because if there are DPs in New York that are more New York than these two guys, I don't know who they are. Tom and Frank, I mean, we've known each other for decades. And, you know, the world of filmmaking is rather a small world, actually. And I've watched these guys' careers arc upward and upward and upward. So I'm really thrilled tonight to have the chance to have a conversation. You don't only shoot in New York, but you know, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So Tom and Frank, you're both ASC members. You both have a long list of feature films and now television that you've been shooting. We have clips we're going to show and illustrate or provide the basis for a discussion. I think maybe we might even want to start with the clips, except that would each of you introduce yourselves? You can do a better job than I just did. Introduce yourselves.
All right.
For instance, I think you started a documentary, I'm guessing?
Well, I started out at the bottom as a PA after getting a master's from Tom Houghton's father's department at NYU Grad School, Film and TV. So there's a sort of circular motion here, but
you
no.
studied in London too, didn't you?
Well, I did 6 months at the Slade in London, and was fortunate enough to. I was writing a paper on David Lean, so I said, "Who's living and who's shooting?" When I was there, and this was a long time ago. He was doing Ryan's Daughter in Ireland, so I went over there, sort of wiggled my way in, and spent a week there watching a major motion picture being shot, and met his DP, Freddie Young, and Lean and others, and just learned a lot, and continued pursuing it. But and once I got to New York, it was NYU. It was a PA starting at the bottom, and then working in different crafts in NABIT in those days, and then evolving into Local 600, Local 644, but it was commercials, it was documentaries, and slowly into feature films or day playing on feature films that would come to New York, and shooting mostly independent films over the years. And then when the film tax breaks came to New York in the 2000s, a lot of TV came to New York. So that was Rescue Me, that was Elementary, and so it's if you write it out long enough, and hopefully it will stay here, but there were times when it wasn't busy in New York, but it's come back. So that's in a nutshell the arc.
That's what I mean by if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, because it's not always been easy to make it here in New York. The easy thing would be to go to LA, which is what many of our friends have done.
I spent time there. It's just I did some work there, but it sort of landed mostly here in New York, which was fine with me because it's a great place to work.
Frank, what is your path? How did you get from there to here?
I actually did pretty much a similar way, except I didn't meet David Lean. I went to NYU, graduated there, and just shot and shot and shot. When I got out of film school, my first year, I think I made $2,500. I was a PA, and I remember trying to find work, and I would PA one day, and then I would maybe get a little commercial that I would do for almost nothing. And I just worked my way up being a camera assistant, electric, but it was pretty much independent films and TV. Yeah, it was just anything I could get, I shot. And
you started a film collective.
Oh yeah, when I was in film school, I started a collective called the New Focus Film Cooperative. We had about 50 members, and it went on for about 5 or 6 years, and then I couldn't run it anymore, so I think it just petered out. I guess we just let it go. But it was we had so many friends going to it. When I went to school with Spike Lee and Ang Lee and Jim Jarmusch and Tom DiCillo, Ernest Dickerson, all these New York filmmakers. And I guess I graduated into doing TV. And what you're going to see tonight is it's going to be very different in that the first teaser is from an independent film that we shot in 17 days. And the other one is a short film. It's a half-hour film that we're now in development to make it into a series. And that is, I wrote it, directed, shot it, and we'll show 8 minutes of that. But we tried to shoot it like a movie. That was done in 7 days, 7 nights.
We're going to start with Tom's clips first. We'll end the session with Frank's, the 2 clips he just mentioned. By the way, I should point out, the reason that both of you started as PAs is because when we all started out, it was film, and I mean what they now call analog film. It was motion picture film, and 35 millimeter, even 16 millimeter films, independent films, they were expensive. You had to buy the film, you had to pay for the processing, you had to rent the camera, you had to, all this stuff you had to, and there were a lot of, the skill sets were pretty deep that you needed. You didn't just decide to graduate from film school and suddenly be a director or a DP. You often worked your way up. So both of these guys are kind of exemplars of that path. And they're not only, I mean, everyone we know almost has the same story. Do you want to set up your first clip?
So I worked on American Horror Story, season 3, American Horror Story Coven, which was shot in New Orleans. And what happened on that show, Michael Goy, ASC, was the main DP, and he was doing every episode. And it was very burdensome to do every episode on a TV show, which had long hours and so forth. So by episode 7, I got a call, and we talked back and forth. And so I went to New Orleans and started shooting the odd episodes, 7, 9, 11, and part of 13. So this is some scenes cut together, and it was shot on 35 millimeter film on Panavision cameras, and it was very operatic in style, because Ryan Murphy, that's his genre, and it's just over the top, but with thoroughbred actors and great sets and opportunities to create illusions. And Michael had set up so we shoot some elements in 16 millimeters, some elements on a hand crank camera, and so forth, to create effects in camera. There aren't too many effects here, and we do skip bleach when necessary. So let's run the clip.
Where did you develop the film?
Photochem was the only place you could do it in that era. Deluxe was starting. Deluxe New York was starting to close down their new lab, and Photochem was the dailies, and Encore Hollywood did the scanning, but it was therefore a delay. It's not like the next overnight or the next morning you would find out how your film was.
How dailies were they? Were they 3 days?
2 days. You know, you call the next day, you get maybe the next day and a half, find out if there's something on the film.
Quick question, were you involved in the grading of the film?
I would give notes to the colorist who I knew from Rescue Me, coincidentally, so I had a relationship, and he would go through it. I would look at a high-grade version of the cut in New York at Deluxe or New Orleans and give him notes after that, but it was pretty on, and I mean, you just don't have time to, and you don't need to do it in, frame by frame, but an overview, but somebody who knows the project is very helpful. So you're not starting someone out in a show, you're moving it forward.
Good. And by the way, one other note, the premise of this whole conversation is that back in the day when we were starting out, the people that shot television were not ASC members. They were people that shot television for the most part. some television programs on the West Coast that were shot in 35. That's not true of. But you know what I'm saying in general? These days, the quality of cinematography is so good on many of these television series that you see people, you know, with CSC or ASC or whatever after their name, because some of the best cinematography is now on television, which is stating the obvious.
No, that's true, but there were George D.B., there was other people, the guy shot Moonlighting, Joe Perry Finneran. If you look back and get to know these guys, Saul Negrin in New York. So it's a mix, but I'm sure there was a preference for big movie.
One last question. Is this multi-camera, single
No,
camera?
this is one camera, occasionally a second camera, but because of the virtuosity of it, not the script virtuosity, you couldn't always have more. You couldn't shoot it like a standard 3-camera show.
It was storyboarded, I'm sure.
Some of it, yeah.
Let's roll the clip.
It's right here.
That looks great on the big screen.
Good. That's good.
And again, these characters are literally witches.
Yes, they're all witches. They all have different skills, and Jessica Lange is the chief of the Coven, who's eventually going to turn it over to Sarah Paulson at the end of that season.
Quick question, does shooting in film lend itself to single camera? What I mean by that, if you were shooting 2 or 3 cameras, you'd have 2 or 3 as much stock to process, ship, transfer, and everything else.
Well, you tend to be careful, but film is not the most expensive commodity you're using. I mean, now it's become a more expensive part because it's more rare, but the thing is, it creates discipline too, because you just don't keep rolling and go back to one and start the scene over.
With one camera.
Yeah, one camera, but multiple. I mean, because these shots are so specific, and the Steadicam shot, virtuoso Steadicam shot, turning upside down in the kitchen, going in with the guy, the blood, we had an amazing team, but you are just very. You plan the shots, like this scene in the toilet looking up, that was a special shot, that's one camera. Only occasionally in some dialogue scenes would you do more than one, but we carried it with us and would do inserts with it and things like that. So, look, one camera in the right place, it can be very well lit, and you move on to the next shot, very well lit, and you make a very good movie. Doesn't mean you have to have multiple cameras. It seems to be an economy people think they need, but it's not always that economical.
Agreed.
So this clip, that was the end of episode 13, where Sarah Paulson has become the queen of the Coven as the death of Jessica Lange. It illustrates a set that is built in. We always like to have dark walls to light, but this was basically wooden walls with textures, but it was a challenge in a way, but it worked out great because within that white tonality, you can add light, and create a range of the grayscale. So it fit the production design, and we went with it. But that had a crane shot in the inside, and also in the other clip, there was a techno crane pulling back on the table at the dinner scene, and the same crane was being used going in on the couch because we had a techno crane that day.
And the series, again, is shot in New Orleans, right?
Those 2 seasons, Coven and Freak Show, seasons 3 and 4. Now they've been in Los Angeles since then, and on digital.
And I guess the next clip you're going to show us from Elementary, maybe?
Oh, right. Okay. So this is the TV show in New York, Elementary, with Lucy Liu and Johnny Lee Miller, which I went for 7 seasons. It finished in December. And I joined it in season 2, and it was shot on Alexa, and in a very different style than this, which points out that DPs know how to do different things. You do one style of a film, and they think that's what you do. But we are artists, and we know how to interpret things differently. And this was about Sherlock Holmes and Lucy and Johnny, Sherlock and Watson, solve crimes in an hour. This was the hostage situation at a diner, and Lucy was a hostage and was rescued. And then, so let's play that.
Tristan? Thanks.
So that was a scene on location in a diner, done over, there were a lot of pages in that place, so it was a day and a half, I think. And then the brownstone is a set that was built at Silver Cup East, a marvelous aged brownstone with lots of textures, and we had different rooms built, bedrooms and the kitchen, but it was just well done, and it evolved between seasons to make it more walls be wild that could be pulled out so you could get lights where they should be, because it's not good when they build a set and it becomes a location because you can't move anything. But this became very, very functional for the show, and sorry to see it torn down, but and Johnny and Lucy. So this is a much more formal style. The camera, there's handheld occasionally, there's Steadicam when necessary, but it's all about the words. And it's a CBS show, so it's illuminated well. And it was, it had a good audience, so it had a good run. So I'm very happy with it.
Shooting with primes?
No, we used the ingenue different zooms, because one director thought I want to use primes because it's going to be wonderful, but it wasn't.
And since you just showed examples of shooting on film and shooting digitally with an Alexa, I know that each show has its own lighting scheme, but how do you light differently for those two mediums? And that goes for you as well, Frank. Do you light them differently? Do you approach them differently?
I really think good lighting is good lighting, and you have to have all the hooks and stuff. You just can't do a flat lighting setup and expect it to be adjusted in post-production and color correction. So you just have to think, look at the skin, see the blocking, look at the skin tones, see where you want to have accents. The brownstone had lots of little textures and architectural things that could light and layers to give depth. So you're trying to create depth in this situation, and then you have faces and skin tones, and you want your actors to look good. So in Horror Story, we had veteran actors and actresses, and then we had the young cast. So you can't treat them differently and saying Lucy and Johnny look pretty good, but you have to take care of them. So that was the specific difference is hard for me to pinpoint. I mean, you're looking at a monitor, you're sort of a slave to the monitor. When I was doing film, I don't have it. I just light it by instinct. Maybe occasionally I would take some stills, and take a light meter reading, but you just sort of have a feeling for what you're going to be getting. Maybe it's based on experience or intuition. So but it is amazing if you don't look at the monitor when you're doing digital and you light it, and then you come and look at the monitor, it somehow looks different. It's changed on you, but not that it's bad, but it's just different.
That's interesting. You don't know what the difference is?
Well, it's just a different color space than your head, either in your brain or on the film emulsion or in...
Is your brain still attuned to film?
You think it is, but as the films get faster, it's harder to create contrast. If you're shooting at, yesterday I was shooting 1600 ASA, so that's different than shooting at 50 ASA Ektachrome. So you do adjust. In the days of slow ASA, if you wanted to see something, you had to light it. Mm. These days, you have to really unlight things if you don't want to see them to create the contrast. So you're sort of working from the different end of the scale.
You can see into the shadows more.
Exactly, which you don't always want to do.
Yeah, I think film, you really have to look deep. You don't know what's going. You go through experience, through knowing what the film, the sensitivity and the shadows and the under and overexposure. I don't know. Maybe because I'm getting older, I think I was probably. It was a different type of focus with film. You just had to really look deep. While on digital, you're looking deep, but it's in front of your face. So it's, to me, there's no question, digital is easier for me.
So you're looking at the face of the
Yeah,
monitor.
and I think it's why a lot of people can do pretty good work. I think in digital, you need to be so much better to do great work, because there's a lot of people who can put a monitor up. Again, composition, et cetera, lenses, that's the same thing, but lighting is another game. I also think, for me, I'm quicker with digital. I see it. The process is different. Digital, it's a little bit more chaotic, and sometimes maybe not as focused, maybe.
In a good way?
Sometimes it isn't, because you can keep the camera rolling, you just keep on shooting and shooting, and also people who can see the film, producers, directors, go, good enough, hey, Picasso, that's good enough, because they see it on the monitor, and they think that that's where you're going. In the past, you might be able to push it a little further for excellence and get a little better product. Again, after whatever you do, and you do it a lot, you get better at it. So at this point, I do love the digital medium. I think there's more freedoms. I think you have more things you can do, and more things you can change. You have to be more accurate. I think it's good to learn in film and then do digital instead of the reverse.
I guess so, but I guess that's not possible anymore for the most part. It just isn't going to happen. That era's over. A lot of film, forgive me, Kodak, a lot of film is still being shot and developed and will be, but it's more boutique-y. That's my take on the
I
world.
found Kodak and Photochem and the labs have been to young filmmakers who really want to shoot a short film on film, get cooperation, which really lets them get their feet wet in learning that magic of having to wait overnight to see what they've done. So
I
it's
think
a good
that
discipline.
If you are just learning if you're getting a chance to shoot 1 or 2 films on film, I don't think you're going to have enough time to get really good at it. While digital, it's there.
Get good at film, you mean?
Exactly.
Yes.
So, you need that time to get better and better. At least I needed a lot of time.
Right. When we were talking about multiple cameras film, and I kept thinking, where do you find 3 loaders these days?
We still train them. It's,
Anyway, we should move on. I'm being told that our time is,
I understand.
like sand going through it's dwindling. So we have another clip or two, I think, of yours.
a short clip, yeah. Let's roll it and I'll talk over it, or you can dip the sound after the one scene in the library, if that's up, Tristan.
And then we'll move to Frank's clips.
Was overcast and had no real shadows, and same with London, was a rainy day. So that I just wanted to show, because that ended that season, but it was tricky because we shot the New York part first and sort of engineered it backwards to do the London part.
That's amazing. That looked great.
Yeah, it worked. It was a lot of fiddling and rotoscoping, and also the plate in the room. The dialogue scene is out the window is a park that's across the street. So it was. We sent a small crew to London and an English cameraman, so it was a way to get away with it. Because this show, we didn't do a lot of visual effects. Horror Story did a lot of visual effects, so it was. I just wanted to show that.
Quick question: did you shoot the street in the village first, and then send
Yes.
that to the camera person in London?
They saw it. They knew how to match it, but it was really just shooting tiles of the deep side and the south side of the street from London, and then the park right behind Sherlock, and that green screen shot to place him in that geography.
How big a green screen?
Well, you really just have to go around his body. So it was a 12, probably just a 12 by. Deep in the street, it was probably 20 by.
That's what I
And
meant.
there was a leg coming out from one building to block it, because they crossed past it, and that was going to be stripped out. So where the actors cross, theoretically you need to do it. But outside the window was not a green screen in the others. Start of it, that was just they stripped it from the window panes because we couldn't get a green screen it was on Riverside Drive, so we couldn't get anything out there. So you can do that too.
Just exemplifies what's possible today. And it's nothing to do with budget. You could do this in Final Cut.
Yeah.
Frank, do you want to set up your clips? You've got 2 clips coming.
The first one is it's on Netflix now. It's called An Interview with God, and it's just a small independent film we shot in 17 days, and with some good actors, and we shot in anamorphic. And I use Panasonic Vericams and LTs. I adore the camera because of the texture, the look. It looks filmic. And it has a dual ISO, which is 800 and 5,000. So you're never worried about not having enough light. Again, it's a good thing about digital.
What lenses are you using?
On this, I used a ingenue zooms, which are less anamorphic for the early part of the film, and then I switched to Cook primes, and they were anamorphic and quite wonderful. And this is just a montage of the
You
film.
mix in the small EVA-1, the smaller Panasonic camera, sometimes with the Vericam, don't you?
Yeah,
there
I
examples
mixed
of
them
that
all. In this one, no, we didn't. On a TV series I finished earlier this year, we did, and a movie I did. But in this one, it was pretty much, I believe it, Vericams. So,
Let's
great
take a look.
camera.
I sure hope the actor playing God isn't a method actor who stays in character during the shoot.
The tough part with this is there were a lot of long dialogue scenes, so we had to try to make it exciting.
Probably a lot of bad jokes, too, about God.
Yeah, and this was 2 cameras, 2 Vericams, and I don't know what more to say. It's just that it was a quick shoot, in and out, and the Vericam helped out a lot. And great actors and a quick crew.
Do you want to quickly explain about the 2 ISOs, how the noise level is about the same? You don't pay a penalty in noise, in other words, because not everyone may be familiar with what you're talking about.
Well, the 800 is
ISO 800.
where I always try to shoot. But if I need a little bit more, I go with no problem, and they match to, I think I shot one shot here at 500. Real late, we were rushed, and the lights were low, and I wanted the street light to be a little brighter. But I just move around, and I don't really know the difference. I just make
Your sweet spot is 2,500 when you go to the dark, like the theater scene when it was dark. When the 5,000 basically came down to 2,500.
yes, if you're going to go on brighter, when you need more light, that's the place. to
Barry
be.
Russo from Panasonic.
Yeah. So should we put the other?
Sure. You want
Yeah.
you want to set up the next clip.
This film is very different, I guess, from all of them because I made it, I paid for it, and it's a half-hour film. Like I said, we're trying to make a series out of it at this point, and the thing about it is, it's sort of lit by the locations we found. I had a lot of close friends who are experienced in the business, and they all came, old friends. I had like 6 people with me on this film that were with me at NYU 35 years ago. So I had a good group of friends who have been around for a long time. We shot 7 nights. It was the coldest nights ever. And I had my daughters play the girls. So a lot of it was done by using available light. I would walk them into a street light and put a diffusion in front of it. It was really, I put a bare bulb somewhere. So a lot of it, I think it's definitely shows that the group that we work with have done it before, because it's very simple, shot simple, mostly one camera. We did have two at times, I guess. Panasonic gave it to us. And let's see, what else? The style is very simple. And the reason why is, first, it works, I believe. But also, it was cheaper to do it that way. And we embraced all the limitations. So there's almost no moving camera. It's very classic in its look. And we just embraced it and went with it. Didn't try to do, super explosions and crazy stuff because we just couldn't.
No green screen.
No green screen, no.
Let me say one thing. Part of the mastery of this craft is simplification. It's easy to use, to overcomplicate it, to order every light available, every lens available. But the real truth is, how do you break it down and tell it with economy? And this is what Frank, I've seen this short, but what we all do to keep it simple, 'cause otherwise you don't make your day. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of experience, is that you simplify. Maybe you do it when you're new if you're really good, but I know that I got 70% simpler in my shooting now. I'm sure Tom has, and it looks it. And also, and when you do TV, speed is crucial. First thing they say is, they know if you're good because they see it, but the first thing they ask is he fast? And it makes a big deal. So you simplify because it's better for the look, but it also helps when you politically.
All artists are disciplined. Jackson Pollock is more disciplined than you can imagine. They're all disciplined. You have to be if you reach that level. So I'm glad you brought that point up. It's an important point. Let's roll the clip, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. Did you get good notes from the actors?
Yeah, the little one, I was trying to get her to do something. I did like 5 takes with her, and she said, "Poppy, just let me do it." And I let her do it, and she did it. So that was the notes I gave her.
They're naturals.
Whatever they are. What they did is they came through. I couldn't have done it with parents and young children that weren't mine.
And their agents.
So I made it work. A lot of what happened here is that there's locations that we stole, like the subway, some of the alleyways. I had friends help out. We did everything to make the film work. You know what I mean, is that we compromised, we made changes, we adjusted. So,
It's beautiful work.
thanks. It was cold and nasty, and you can see the Panasonic cameras were fantastic for me because I could shoot under the lowest levels of light. Literally, I would find a location and put a bulb down or a little light around the corner, or get locations that had light and make it work.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Back there, waving your hand. Gordon?
Hey, David, Tom, Frank. First, I want to posit what you were saying earlier, Frank, with regard to how supportive David and Tom have been. I would humbly submit that you're all extremely, continually supportive of all filmmakers and our processes. So I really want to thank you. Careful.
Cinematography questions, anyone?
So
Yes, back in the back.
So
Two people.
here's the question.
Okay.
First one, do you continue to actually shoot? I understand that you're DPing, but actually, are you filming using the cameras yourselves? That's A. And B, how do you mitigate for those times where the DP is often blamed when something goes wrong?
To me?
To both? To
No.
all three?
Well, I don't operate the camera generally. I have very good operators I work with, and I enjoy operating. I have operated, and I was an operator just under a DP, but there's a lot going on so quickly. I think if it was sometimes on a smaller film, I've done it lately, but also when it calls for handheld, the cameras have gotten so cumbersome, filled with all this gack. It's not like having a 16 millimeter Aton and doing your documentary that we used to do. So that's changed. I mean, there are some smaller digital cameras which are very handy. So if the need arises, it would be fun to shoot something, but you're still not looking through you're looking through a electronic finder and stuff like that. So that sort of takes away some of the fun. As far as mistakes happen, and you learn to address it, and you can't be defensive or blame other people. So if something has gone awry, you just deal with it. And sometimes you can get set up, sometimes you can get fired, but that's part of the game.
Yeah, about operating, I have so many people I know who are incredible operators and a lot stronger than me. I don't want to spend the whole day with the camera on my back. I can do better looking at the monitor, working with the director, and we have incredible operators. So sometimes I get the camera and I want to do a shot. Sometimes if there's an actor or an actress that are uneasy, I go, hey, let me do the shot, just so I show that I'm doing a little extra for them. But no, we work with operators. They're quite incredible. They have great ideas. They help morph the shot into something better. I think it's good to operate when you're beginning, though, because you learn incredible amounts about operating and cinema, and also being the center of the set where the camera is. Now what I try to do is have a monitor close to the set, so I'm not hidden in a tent, and I need to be where the actors see us, where the directors can talk to me right away. So I stand clear, close to the operators, and on some TV shows we have headsets, which even help it, because sometimes we're shooting 2 or 3 cameras, and we need adjustments in the middle of the shot. There's nothing worse than having a 10-minute scene and somebody's blocked, and the camera just stays there, and you've wasted a performance. So it's good to be able to talk to your operators and get it going. And the
So
other,
as DP, the actors rely on you to make them look good, right?
Mhm. Oh, for sure.
And so they befriend, they become friendly,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a communication between the DP and the actors.
Yeah, there should be a relationship, although they don't always have the patience or understand what we do. So you have to sort of be subtle and help them. I mean, some will notice you're doing extra care, but others don't, but both types need it.
Yeah, I think in the film business, trust is a big deal. The director has to trust the DP, and actors have to trust the director for sure. I mean, that's one of the most important things. And they have to trust the DP. Well, the moment you get trust with them, they help you out in a lot of ways, and it's a good teamwork. But you really have to work on that. Sometimes it takes a little while to get that done, but usually there's ways with experience to be supportive and gain the trust.
That's an important point that you're highlighting. Filmmaking is collaboration, always. Back in the back, too. First one person, then the other.
This question is for Tom with your work on Elementary. One of the really key things about the way Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote Sherlock Holmes was he always provided the information for you and the clues for you to kind of figure out what's going on without necessarily the characters telling you what they mean. Was that something that informed the way that you approached the episodes?
Well, you see, it's in the script, and you always know when you read the first act, it's going to go someplace else. You know, there's a lot of false cues or miscues just to keep the story going. So we had a very clever show creator, and the writers are very good. So there's a lot of dialogue, and there's sometimes too much exposition, but that's something you have to make it look interesting visually, and that's me, the director, and what I do too. So, but you really have to, because the audience, the hardcore audience is so dedicated to the canon and Arthur Conan Doyle. And there are references, and they always keep going back to it. So they've got to be as authentic as possible, and we just can't smooth it over. So it can get tedious, but you've got to respect it, and I think they did a good job.
There was another question back there? Yes.
Hey, thank you, folks. As an indie filmmaker, I'm constantly striving to figure out what the minimal footprint of a crew can be. So your short film was really interesting, Frank. I mean, just incredible. And I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what your crew footprint was, and whether you got permits, stuff like that.
Well, I guess it was my money, and I was sort of producing it with some young producers. So I got all the keys were friends, but there were second AC or a boom person or the sound person. Those people I had to pay. It was a little bigger than I wanted, so it wasn't too small of a footprint. But like we just stole, like in the subway, I called a great location guy, and I said, "How much does this cost?" He said, "It's $15,000 a night." So I said, "Cool. So let's shoot in the subway. We'll steal it." So we went 10 o'clock at night, and I always had another scene, a location that I could do the same scene at, a bus stop outside that we were allowed to. But we went in, we got it done, and then we said, "Hey, let's hop on the train." And we hopped on the train, and we shot. That was all, improvisation. I just said, "Okay, he's watching. He looks at the girls, blah, blah, blah." And we drove all the way down from 86th Street to 14th and back, and we got it. So that was like 4 people, 5 people maybe. But it wasn't, we had makeup, we had hair, we had wardrobe. So it wasn't that small of a footprint.
Quintessential New York filmmaker. I have a question. Large format cameras, any interest? With the large sensors?
I shot with a 8K camera yesterday, so I'm curious about it. I mean, I lit it.
The red?
It was the Panavision. They say inside the guts are red.
The Millennium?
I guess yeah, XL2. So I'm curious what I'm learning, because I haven't had to start a new show. So it's much different if you're starting. A show elementary was 7 years ago. So a new show would have a different input, different ideas.
There's a whole new generation of professional motion picture digital cameras that have large sensors as big as a full frame DSLR. And every major company just about has one now, and it's like a wave that's hitting us right now. And that's why I'm asking this question. Frank,
I
what
think you find a camera, again, I'm a very simpleton. I find the camera that I like, and unless there's a special purpose for another camera, I get the camera, and at this point, it's the Panasonic that I use. And
Super 35, right?
And it's like, Cartier-Bresson used the Leica and did all his shots with that. So I try to make everything simple, though I do like to learn about everything that's going on.
Looks like Super 35 is going to become the new small format, huh? Just a thought. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank Tom Houghton and Frank Prinzi. Beautiful work on the screen.